5 days ago, Cannon Hinnant, a 5-year-old white boy that was riding his bike in his front yard, was shot in the head and killed by a 25-year-old black man who happens to be his neighbor. The entire situation is incredibly sad. The killing was unprovoked, unjustified, and extremely unfortunate. And all of that goes without saying, right? The loss of an innocent child's life is something I think all of us can agree on is just about the worst thing in the world. But I don't understand why this is being compared to George Floyd. I don't understand why this is being used as a reason to prove that Black Lives Matter is a false movement. George Floyd and Cannon Hinnant have absolutely nothing to do with each other. The crimes are unrelated. The murders are not similar. And the circumstances of the murders are not similar. These comparisons don't do anybody any good. I've seen online questions asked like, where's your outrage now over Cannon? Where's your protest now? Where are the t-shirts? Where are the rallies? Where's the pressure? Why don't you care about Cannon? It's not a fair standard. To say that people can't care about George Floyd and Cannon, or to say that people only care about George Floyd and not Cannon, is just not true. But since you asked, the reason why there's not protests and riots over Cannon is because there's not protests and riots over most murders. A lot of people are killed in this country every year. And I'm not glad about any of it. But much less often is someone killed due to systemic racism. Less often is someone killed due to racial injustice in the criminal justice system. Less often is someone killed for being what they were born, specifically for being a certain ethnicity, and in the case of George Floyd, Black. I hate that Cannon's life was taken way too soon, but it was not taken because he's white. And yes, I know his suspect, who I refuse to name in this video, was Black, but he did not kill Cannon because he was white. And while George Floyd started a conversation in this country, it's not a new conversation. We've been talking about racial injustice and systemic racism in this country since this country was founded. We've been talking about the unfair treatment of Black people in America since this country was founded. I hate what happened to Cannon. I want to make that painfully clear. My heart breaks for his entire family, and this is so unfortunate. But it's not going to start a larger conversation about all of the young white children that are at risk for being murdered by Black people, because it's not a problem. It's definitely not a systemic problem. It happened in this case, but it doesn't happen all the time, nor is it a problem that you could point to with anything real to back it up. Black men in the criminal justice system are at risk. Systemic racism is real. Racism in general is real. So when we get fired up about George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or Breonna Taylor, that's why. It doesn't mean we don't have sympathy and empathy for the Cannons of the world. It just means that he wasn't killed for the same reason. It was a senseless act of violence. But it does not point to a larger systemic problem. It's a very isolated incident. That's the difference. But I shouldn't have to explain that to you. We shouldn't be having this conversation about how Cannon is proof that Black Lives Matter only cares about black people. No. Black Lives Matter cares about racial injustice. That's what the movement is about entirely. So you can't expect people to get mad about every loss of innocent life. Innocent people get murdered in this country every single day. You won't hear a word about most of them. I just find it strange that people are using Cannon to say that Black Lives Matter doesn't care about innocent white children being killed, or that the country in general doesn't care about innocent white children being killed because they're not raising the same amount of concern that they did for George Floyd. I think I've already explained why that is. People care, and it's horribly sad, but it doesn't point to a larger problem. People had to take to the streets. They had to protest. They had to say George's name just to get charges. Cannon, who deserves justice, I want to make that clear, will get justice. The suspect is already in custody. He's already been charged with murder. It took less than a day. The situations aren't the same. We're still waiting for justice for Breonna Taylor. That's the difference. It's the systemic difference. I hate that a kid was killed in his front yard. I mean, this is America. We shouldn't be reading headlines like that. But we also shouldn't be comparing them to someone else that was murdered just because you don't like the movement that sprung up around it. That's all I got. Simple today. No intro, no script, just my thoughts. If you want to waste your time comparing Cannon and George, you can, but you're not proving any points and you're not doing anything constructive.